So, hi everyone. It's lovely to see so many here joining us for this session today on U.S. interviewing skills for international students. I am Marissa Crowley. I am in the Career Education Office. I work as one of the college career mentors here. And I'll let my colleague Christina Breiter introduce herself as well. She's going to be co-presenting with me today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christina Breiter. I'm a career community advisor, specifically in the CFBE community, which stands for Consulting, Finance, Business, and Entrepreneurship. And I also advise with regard to the law.
Great. And then we have some of, oh, go ahead, Christina, sorry.
Just to say, thank you for joining us. And then we also have some people you probably already know, but I'll let Marissa introduce.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've got some of your wonderful staff from Slater here. If you both just want to introduce yourselves, though students probably know you, hopefully.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone again. I recognize a lot of names. I'm Tana, working at Slater, of course, and I'm here to help with any questions that you might have.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leanne Dolat. I'm the program coordinator for the Slater International Center, and it's really good to see you all, and thank you for joining us in this workshop.
Great. Thanks, everybody. So we will dive in then. We just have an hour and lots of content to cover, and we're going to save lots of time at the end for your questions, okay? So save those up, or you can pop them in the chat, and we will come back and cover those all at the end of the workshop. But first, we're going to go through a bunch of information that I hope will be really helpful for you. So just to give you a little overview here of what we're going to be covering in the session today. First is going to be an introduction to interviewing and what we think of in career ed as the 4 Ps of interviewing. So preparation, partnership, presentation, and proficiency. And these categories, this structure really gives an overview of how to approach any professional interviewing for a job, for an internship, whatever it is that you're looking to do. Some good strategies about how to set yourself up to really, make a good impression and be prepared and really nail that interview. So we'll talk through those strategies with you. In addition, I made a note at the bottom, we are going to be talking a little bit more specifically about virtual interviewing, since that's probably going to be the name of the game for most of the interviews this year, as well as some practice questions that you might want to review, common types of questions in interviews, and how you can get more practice at answering those well. And of course, special considerations for international students. That'll actually be the whole second half of the presentation, okay? So interviewing, general, overview first, and then specific things, questions that you might have as international students in the second half. Okay, so let's get started out then. I'm just gonna dive right in. So when we think about those 4 Ps, you have a job interview coming up, or maybe an interview for a summer internship. And the first thing that you really need to do once you schedule that interview is begin this process of preparation. And what that preparation mostly refers to is lots of research. So you never want to head into a job interview just hoping to kind of think on your feet, in the spur of the moment and ad-lib your responses. You want to go in really armed with good research so that you can be really informed and be able to speak specifically to what the employer is going to be interested in and why you're interested in that particular role in that particular organization. Hopefully you've already gotten a head start on this research process and really knowing about the company, about the field that you're going into, about the role that you're interested in. Hopefully you've gotten that head start while writing your cover letter, because you'll want to do a lot of that same kind of research when crafting a cover letter so that you can really tailor it to the organization and the role. So some of this might already be familiar. It might be part of why you want this job in the first place. But in addition to that, you want to do your homework. Learn about the people who are going to be interviewing you. Learn about the company. Make sure that you know the industry trends, what's in the news about this field that you might want to be aware of. So I put here, you can see on the slide, this reminder of the different things that you want to make sure you've done a little bit of background research and be prepared. The company and the field. So these are things you look right on the company website, of course. What do they do? What's their mission? How big is their team? Is it a big team or a small team? What does the structure look like? You want to get that lay of the land. Look also at news articles. You can just Google the company. Have they been in the news lately? Maybe they have a new product about to launch, or they've been doing some really interesting policy research and you want to know what's what's happening with them currently that will be of interest. You might want to mention during your interview. There are also general career guides you can use that are linked from our website. You can find all of this information in much more detail on the Career Ed website. Like vault.com is a good example of a place you can go to get up-to-date industry news. In addition to your career communities, which is also through career education, we have advisors who specialize in these industries, and their newsletters and their web pages can be a good place to just sort of see what the good resources are, know what's going on in that field. Learn about the interviewers, right? The people who are actually going to be speaking with you. Often when you're offered an interview, you'll learn who is it going to be with, right? What's that person's name? What's their title? And it's good to just look quickly at who that person is and what their role is within the organization. Are they brand new there? Maybe they just started a few months ago, or have they been there for 30 years? That might inform the kinds of questions that you want to ask them, what you would hope to learn from that person. And so it's good to have just some of the basics of who they are, what they do, how long they've been there. And finally, of course, learn about the role. Really read that job description so carefully so that you know what are the skills that are important for this role. What are the qualifications that they're looking for? What are you going to be doing all day? Who are you going to report to? Really try to get a picture, a mental picture of what that job is in that company, so that you can really envision what's going to be important to ask about and what's going to be important to know heading into that interview. So a lot of this is just reading through materials online, talking with your college career mentor or one of our career community advisors to help you prepare and really narrow in on what it is you should be knowing about this company before you head in for that interview. Jot down what appeals to you most. What do you like about this place? Why do you want to work there? You definitely want to know that. What do you like about this job? And any questions that come to you as you're reading about the company or reading about the role. What are some things that aren't clear or you'd like to learn more about? Jot those down. Those will come in handy later because you are going to want to ask some questions during your interview. So all of this general research helps you to just set the stage so that you go in feeling really informed. The second part of this preparation is sort of researching, reflecting on yourself. So review your resume carefully. This might sound silly, right? You are yourself. You know yourself. Why should you have to study or remember these things about yourself? But you really do want to, because it's easy to get tongue-tied in an interview. We all have had that moment where someone asks you a question and you just draw a complete blank, right? You can't remember any of the things you've ever done. Can't think of a good example. So review your resume, really reflect on the experiences that you've had, what key skills you think you can offer to this role, and look through your resume. Where have you used those? What are good examples you could speak to highlight those skills? Again, reflect on why you want this role. Why is it a good fit for you? Why are you interested in it? How does it relate to your long-term goals and help to get you where you want to go? And what experiences have you had that have prepared you for this opportunity? So just do that reflection. Make sure you really know why you're doing this and what you have to offer to them that you'd like to highlight in the interview. And then as you're doing all of that reflection of all the experiences that you've had and all of your many skills, know which ones feel the most important and the most relevant to highlight to that interviewer, right? They're going to ask you questions like, tell us about a time when you did this, when you faced a challenge, or when you worked as part of a team. So you should sort of have an idea going in of what are the few things that you really want to make sure they know about you by the end. Maybe a great research project that you did, or really interesting volunteer work that has helped to prepare to make you a good candidate for this internship. Choose the 3 to 5 key qualifications, skills, and or experiences that are unique to you, that you want to make absolutely sure they're going to know about you by the end of this interview. Choosing those, keeping those in mind, kind of using them as your personal brand, right? The center of your personal narrative for this interview. I'm going to keep coming back to that research, that volunteer work, those technical skills. I'm going to keep talking about those as really important qualifications. That helps you to stay centered and organized when you're answering questions. And it can help you in the spur of the moment to think of good examples to use. If they ask you a question that you never would have anticipated, you can say, okay, what were the 3 to 5 things I really wanted to highlight? And let me think of examples related to those. It sort of narrows the scope for you, so you can make sure you stay on message, talking about the things that are most important. So you do want to reflect and decide ahead of time which of your skills and experiences are the most important to highlight, so you can make sure that you talk about those. And then finally, of course, is practice, practice, practice. That's the other big part of preparation. As you're thinking about the experiences that you want to talk about, the skills that you want to highlight, practice talking about those out loud several times. Don't just think of the answer in your head, really say it out loud. Lots of times a good tip is, practice it in the shower, right? You can just talk out loud, you've got 10 minutes. Have people listen to your answers or not. Just say them out loud and listen to yourself saying it. Record yourself. Do a mock interview with your college career mentor or your advisor. You want to really get comfortable saying these responses, talking about yourself and telling your story out loud so that it doesn't feel awkward when you're doing it in front of an employer. You can rehearse your answers to some really common questions like, tell us about yourself, walk us through your resume, why do you want this job, why do you want to work here, and what are your biggest strengths and weaknesses? Those are questions that will come up in most interviews at some point, or some version of these questions. So if nothing else, you should practice answering each of these out loud. We do have guidance on our website about how to strategize. Like when they say, tell us about yourself, what should you say? We have guidance about how to strategize and how to build your answer to each of these questions so that you can practice it and be effective. So you can take a look at that under interviewing on our website. And again, also, I know I'm just, saying this many times, but you can always feel free to do a mock interview or practice any of these answers with any of the career ed staff. And we'd be really happy to hear what you're thinking, hear what you're going to say, and give you feedback and help you to strategize. So these are the basics of how you want to prepare in advance in the days or the week leading up to this interview. Is really researching the company and the job, knowing who the people are that are going to be interviewing you, reflecting on yourself and what you want to highlight in this interview, and then practicing how you're going to say all of that out loud. And here, the next step in preparing for an interview, we can think of as partnership, which is really being strategic and intentional about how you're going to communicate your fit with an organization. So it's not just about who they are and who you are. It's about how you fit together, right? Why you're a good fit for what they're looking for. So the 2 overall goals in any interview are to communicate your value add. That means the skills, the qualifications that you have to offer, and your fit for what they're looking for. Some places that you might think about where this idea of fit shows up is where your values align. Maybe there's something in their mission statement that is really important to you, something you really believe in. That's a good place to talk about fit. Maybe you have skills that are exactly what they need, that are listed in that job description. Maybe there's something about this opportunity or this company that's really interesting to you. It just aligns with what you love to study, what you love to think about in your spare time. So interests can be a great point of alignment and fit to highlight. Will this role optimize your strengths? So what you bring, you are really good at, those sort of core competencies. Maybe you're a great people person. You love networking and working with a team, and that's what this role is going to be all about. So that's a great area of overlap. Think about whether their mission and culture resonates with you, whether the role represents the kind of lifestyle that you're looking to cultivate, and any concerns you have about this opportunity. So a place for you to sort of mentally note, I'm not sure if this is a fit. Maybe I'll ask that question, or I'll think about how high a priority is for me on that one. So you really want to reflect and make sure that this feels like a good fit for you. And again, think about how you might talk about it being a good fit and where you can add value by having the exact skills or strengths that they're looking for, or having that real value alignment. So that's another part of your preparation, is a lot of that reflection, what you can offer and how you fit.
So as you prepare for an interview, you also want to think about you present yourself. While the substance is what's really the most important, the reality is how people make judgments about how we look and how we present ourselves. So it's really important to give some thought and some time to your presentation, your professional skills at every touch point. Some of this is stating the obvious, but of course you want to be polite. You want to be concise. That's where a lot of the practice and the work that you did in your preparation and your thinking about your fit. You want to be concise in the messages that you are communicating in your interview. You want to, when in doubt, you want to be formal. You know, if in doubt, lean towards being more formal in how you address somebody, in how you greet them, in how you present yourself. You're less likely to go wrong being formal than you are the other way around. And of course, you want to be positive. You know, you want to be up. People are more attracted to and drawn to positive things than we are to negative things. So you are promoting yourself. So you want to be positive. You want to bring the most positive energy you can, because that obviously affects your presentation. Next slide. So in-person interviewing, not that we have a whole lot of that at the moment, but just to run through what you want to think about for those interviews is you want to bring a notebook and pen. You may not use it, but you want to have it. You want to bring always a copy of your resume. Probably they will have it, but you want to be prepared, show that you're prepared in that event that they, for whatever reason, don't have it, or something went amok and they weren't able, the printer wasn't working and they weren't able to print it out. Whatever, you want to have a copy of your resume in hand. Practical things, you want to have the directions to your interview location. You want the phone numbers to call in case that there are difficulties when you're heading out to get to your in-person interview. You want to, in advance of that, review the directions because you want to arrive at least 10 to 15 minutes early, just to allow for things to go wrong. Things can always seem to go wrong at the worst time. So therefore, if you build some in, it's much better to be there early, not to be there late. More in keeping for today's world at the moment are phone or virtual interviewing. Again, similar practice. You want to have a notebook and pen available. You want to have your resume available, perhaps even up on your computer if you have to just email it to them on hand, but also have it for yourself to go through. You want to have the names and titles of your interviewers. That's probably something you want ideally have in either case, but you may not, less as common in in-person interviews. People today, because of having to prepare in advance of the Zoom, they tend to send you that information in advance, so you want to have that. A really important thing, test your technology the day before. Again, sort of what can go wrong sometimes does go wrong. So you want to have practiced those things, so at least you know how to get out of a difficult situation if that happens. Ideally, you have everything working smoothly and you've worked out all the bugs. You want to sign in or call right on time. Really important. You don't have to be 10 to 15 minutes early, as in when you're physically showing up, but you want to be punctual. You want to be on time. Also, think about your space and how you are in the Zoom world, how you are being perceived by the other people. Find a make sure if you're in your dorm room, which many people have to be, make sure your bed is made. Ideally, find a blank wall or something that is sort of that you don't mind people sort of seeing, being conscious of what other people are going to see of your space. So also you want to plan for a quiet and private space if possible. Make sure that you don't have any distracting backgrounds. Test your lighting. We were just talking before we got on this Zoom webinar about lighting. Ideally, do not have any light behind you. Have everything sort of behind your computer screen, not behind you. Use headphones with a microphone. That helps to make the presentation or the clarity of your connection. This is a really important one. keep your eye on the camera. A trick that I suggest to people sometimes in looking at the camera is, because we can frequently look at the people, is to take a picture or something and put it right behind your computer screen. That way you're looking at a person. You're not looking necessarily at the person on the screen, because actually when you look on the screen, your eyes are coming down. Be careful and practice also where you're positioning your camera. You want it at you. You don't want it looking down at yourself. You don't want it looking up, you know, your nose. You want to be presented straight forward to the camera. Make eye contact, really important. We express a lot in our eyes, and you know, particularly on this Zoom where everything is very close, it's important to make sure that you have that eye contact. Make sure your head and shoulders are within the screen. You don't want to be down here like this, or sort of way up here. You know, you want to be right sort of in the middle of the screen. We have, as Marissa had pointed out, on our website, we have a lot of information, a lot of web videos, and an enormous amount of strategy to help you walk through this. So please, please go to the career education website and check out what we have. And what to wear. This is always an important one. You want your interviewer to remember you, not what you're wearing. Again, here is where, while our exterior is important, again, we want the focus to be on our interior and who we are. When in doubt, again, be formal. It's much better to lean on that than to be too casual. Generally dark or neutral colors, minimal jewelry. When you are in person, you can worry about closed-toe shoes. Obviously, in the video world, it really only matters what you're wearing, you know, on the top, you know, from the top up. You could wear your pajama bottoms for all they would probably know, but clearly not when you are in person. Also know that if you need it, Career Education has a suit program where we have a whole variety of different suits in different sizes for people. If you do need a suit or need something along those lines and you don't have something that feels appropriate for the moment, please check in with us, because we do have a whole wide range of suits that are available. During the interview, again, somewhat of this is stating the obvious. Be friendly and polite to everyone you encounter. You never always know who a person is or what influence that they may have. Treat everybody with polite respect. Smile and offer a firm handshake. Well, this is when you're in person. Obviously, you offer a firm handshake. Really key. You can tell a lot about a person by their handshake. You know, you do not want any limp fish handshakes. You know, those handshakes where somebody just sort of pops their hand in your hand. You don't want to squeeze the life out of them, but you want a nice, solid, firm handshake. It communicates confidence. And smile, and always smile. This is the one that can be frequently hard in on the videos too, especially when you're not always having that interaction with somebody. You want to smile when you're also having those pre-video taped interviews where you're just sort of in a room by yourself. Really make sure that you smile and emphasize that, because you communicate so much through that, and they don't want a deadpanned person. Again, maintain eye contact. Be mindful of good posture. You don't want to be slouching down here, crunched in. You want to stand up and put your shoulders back. One thing that I always suggest to people before interviews, or actually there are 2 points. One, I suggest that people meditate for about 5 or 10 minutes beforehand to just center yourself. I frequently get very nervous, and so this helps me to center myself and allow me to be in touch with who my authentic self is. I'm also a real advocate of doing the Wonder Woman pose, where you put your hands on your hip. And the reason for that is not so much, you know, fake it till you make it, confidence and all that, but really even more from a yoga standpoint, where if you put your hands on your hips, if you notice, even me here, my shoulders are coming back, and it's allowing my heart and my authentic self to come out. And that's who your interviewers want to see. They want to see the real you, who that is. So try, oh, here's another one I love. You want to avoid using like, and you know. A common, particularly when we get nervous, it is something that happens, see I used it there, happens a lot. A really interesting technique that I used to do when I was in law school with as we were preparing for moot court, we would sit with a partner and we'd have to contemporaneously speak on a topic. Let's say it was apples, and I'd start talking all about apples. Every time I said like, or the other person would switch the topic. And so then I'd have to start talking about something else. You start to realize how frequently you say like, and when you have to start talking about lots of different topics, and it makes you much more aware of it. But try to avoid like, and and make sure any materials that you have are tidy and organized when you show up at an in-person interview or anything that they might see on your desk. After the interview, make sure, again, part of your presentation, you send a thank you email to each interviewer within the 24-hour rule. It should be within 24 hours. Express your appreciation for your interviewer's time. Reiterate your enthusiasm for the opportunity and summarize any main takeaways or anything that stood out from the conversation. Document how the interview went and what you learned from it. Keep those for your own notes. Those might be hopefully for follow-up interviews that you have with other people at the organization.
Great. And so the last one of our 4 Ps here is proficiency. I'm just going to touch on this briefly. This is really the meat of it, the interview questions and answers, right? Everything that you've prepared and reflected on and thought through and gotten ready in advance is all going to help you here in how you actually respond to these questions, remembering that you want to communicate that value add and that fit. What I want to highlight on this slide is this concept of transferable skills, which are things that you can always use to highlight whenever you don't have direct experience. You're there in the interview, they ask you something, you're like, oh no, I've never done that thing before. But you can think about transferable skills you have that might help to show that you can serve this purpose, you can do well and succeed in this role, even though you've never done the same exact thing before. So transferable skills are skills that you've gained in one context, but that you can really effectively apply in a different context. For example, you might have become a great public speaker by doing lots of classroom presentations. And that's wonderful. Your job doesn't require you to give presentations of research in front of a class, but you can translate that into being able to lead large meetings or give workshops in the context of your employer. Or maybe you developed really strong financial skills because you've been the treasurer of a couple of orgs for a few years while you've been at Wellesley, and then you can utilize those bookkeeping, those budgeting skills, working in administration at a nonprofit. So you can really highlight that transferability of your experience. To give you some ideas of what those can be, here are some of the most sought after transferable skills currently, according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers: problem solving, teamwork, written and verbal communication, analytical or quantitative skills, right? Research work you've done and working with data, detail orientation, flexibility, adaptability, leadership, and initiative. What is important about these, as you'll see, we're going to come back to a similar list shortly, because many of these are the exact kind of skills that you are uniquely qualified to discuss as an international student. And that are really highly valued and exactly what you might want to be talking about in an interview of what's unique about you, what do you really have to offer? It's probably a lot of these transferable skills just on the basis of your international experience, if not anything else, you know, all the other things that you've done as well.
So when you go to an interview, there are sort of 6 main types of interview questions that you want to prepare for. Again, I'll put in a plug, as Marissa said, you are welcome to set up a mock interview with anyone in career education, and we'll be happy to sort of run through them with you. But as you prepare for even that meeting, here are the things you want to think about. 1, they're the deceptively easy open-ended questions. Tell us about yourself. Walk me through your resume. Watch out for sharing too much or too little information. Have an intentional narrative. So it's really important to have sort of practiced and bullet pointed out how you want to walk through that kind of an open-ended question. You don't want that to take up the whole interview. They're the negative questions. Describe a mistake, weakness, or, not my favorite word, but failure. Provide a brief context and end on a positive note. most you want, particularly when it comes to a weakness, most weaknesses are a double-edged sword. There's probably a real positive that's on the other side of it. You want to always figure out what that is, and you want to emphasize that as well. It requires practicing. It's really important to think of those examples, much like when you had to take or any English test or an essay answer. You went into the exam with a bunch of examples already in your head. You want those examples for yourself. So come up with one or two sort of what might have been a mistake or what you might think is not your greatest strength or something like that. Particularly with regard to the weakness question, what they're looking for is your maturity and your ability to see, reflect on yourself. So it doesn't really matter what it is. Again, you want to show the positive. The key that you want to show is that I recognize this in myself and I'm working on it. You know, so that's really the important thing, is that you've done, and this is what I think Wellesley women are so amazing at, is the self-reflection. I mean, that's part of what Wellesley really emphasizes with all of you. So you know, don't be daunted by that, but provide a brief context and end again on a positive note. Another behavioral question is, tell me about a time when you did led by example or had a conflict, or it could be anything. Use the situation, task, action, result format. Describe the situation, tell them what the task was, tell them the action you had, and then hopefully end with a positive result. That's the best way to handle those. Again, expect some variation of all of these questions. So have examples in your back pocket so that when the question comes, you're not having to use one of those or pause things because you can't come up with what the answer is. Some other ones might be, the important why trio. Why this field? Why this company or organization? Why this role or position? You're going to get, unequivocally, you're going to get some variation of those questions. So you want to have answers already prepared. You do not have to script it out. I highly recommend, you might practice the script, but I highly recommend you just bullet point it out, because if you script it out, you're frequently too worried about saying exactly the beautiful way you wrote it out. Don't worry about that. Just script it. And again, going back to what I said before, speak from the heart. They want to hear your authentic, genuine version. They want to have a conversation with you. They don't want to have, and for many of you, this is not your first language. You are speaking in a second language. Do not worry about it being scripted or being perfect. They want to just see who you are. Always have your answers prepared in advance. Then there will always be a miscellaneous curveball. What should we know that's not on your resume? Have something extra, something else that's interesting. What's your favorite book, movie, or musician? Again, my favorite word, be authentic. There's no right answer to this. They're just trying to understand who you are as a person. And so that's what you want to be prepared to talk about. And then there are the technical questions as to what's the difference between Java and C++. Those technical questions, typically you'll know in advance if you're having some kind of a technical interview, then you can think about and particularly look to upperclassmen to help you with sort of what kinds of technical questions did they have from the various interviewers. They are the best resource on all of those things. Oops, we had 2 5s there.
Great.
All right.
So that's what you generally want to know about preparing for any interview, right, in advance, and how to approach it, how to behave and sort of get through it while you're there. All things you can find in a lot more detail, and really how to strategize and prepare for on our Career Ed website. And so now we'll move into considerations for international students, right? What you're all really here for. So these are the things that we're going to cover. Marketing your international skills as an asset, which they absolutely are. Being able to understand and communicate your status is very important. Researching an employer's hiring background can be helpful for you, and knowing what employers can and cannot ask in an interview is also going to be really helpful. So marketing your skills as an asset, as an international student, this is so important. We talked a lot about reflecting on what are your skills, what are your qualifications, what do you want to highlight? And many of those may be directly related to the fact that you have been here studying as an international student. You likely have multiple language skills, cross-cultural communication skills. Studying abroad, being anywhere outside of your home environment requires initiative, resourcefulness, and ability to interact with diverse groups of people, and adaptability to new environments, among many, many more. So no, be proud that you have these qualifications. These are things that employers seek. And don't be afraid to highlight them and speak proudly of them in an interview when talking about your experience as an international student, or in your cover letter, and stating that you have been resourceful, you are adaptable, and you can give examples to show that. I'm pulling back here, key attributes that employers want to see on students' resumes, just looking, adaptability, flexibility, that initiative, problem solving, communication skills. These are some of the most in-demand skills that employers are looking for as of 2020. And so just take note of how many of these you have in general, and how many you might be able to directly relate to being an international student, and how much you've learned and faced challenges, right, due to that. That is unique. It is something that works in your favor. And it's something not to shy away from talking about and really selling and discussing it as a strength of yours in an interview environment. Understanding and communicating your status. This is going to be so important for a job interview. The fact is that many employers, and certainly many interviewers, the people actually talking with you in the course of an interview, might not know how this all works, right? They're not really exactly sure what people's different immigration statuses are, or who can get hired and cannot. So don't assume that they know even as much as you know about it. They might not know all that much. You do want to be prepared to answer some basic questions that they might have for you related to your status. And in some cases, educate them a little bit about the process as it relates to you, okay? So the basic things that you want to be sure you know and are comfortable saying or answering are you authorized to work for a job, for an internship in the US? In what fields and for how long? If you're not currently authorized to work, are you eligible to be authorized? What is that process involved, and how long does it take? These might be things that you already know or have a good sense of what you have to do to get CPT authorization, or how that's going to work for you, or you might not yet. There's lots of information that you can look through on the Slater employment page, which is updated regularly. These things, the regulations, they do have a tendency to change quickly. So you want to keep an eye on that employment page and the messages that you're getting from Slater to make sure that you're informed about your status, what it's going to take for you to get that OPT or the academic training or whatever it might be for you, so that you can go ahead and do an internship or work for an employer. So these are two big questions you want to be sure you know the answers to. Are you authorized, or are you eligible for that authorization? And just the basic processes and timelines around those. This one, what to share about your immigration status generally in an interview, are these things I just mentioned. Whether or not you're authorized in the US, that's something you should certainly share. And whether or not you will need visa sponsorship now or in the future. That's another question that will likely come up, that you should know the answer to that, right? And what that means for you. Again, be sure to understand the work authorization options for you, and be prepared to explain them on a basic level to the employer if needed. Okay, these are the basics you just have to know going into this process, because they will come up. One thing that you might want to do heading into a job application, an internship application, or certainly into an interview, is researching an employer's hiring background. So we don't always know for sure if an employer is looking to hire, if they're able to sort of sponsor a visa for a certain person at a certain time. We can't always predict whether they're able to do that, whether they're going to want to do that. But what you can do to get some clues into that process is look at whether they have done so in the past. And so there are many resources that will help you to identify employers that have a history of routinely hiring international students versus those that don't. One place you can look is Handshake. That's an easy one because hopefully it's already familiar for you. So when you're searching for jobs in Handshake or looking at career fairs and employers who are going to be at career fairs in Handshake, there is a filter in there so that you can filter, I'm looking for jobs, I want to see, you know, the keyword financial analyst, and you can filter by work authorization. And see there, you know, who has a history, who has been hiring international students or not, or who is open to doing so and who is not. So look into those filters. Handshake sometimes can take some getting used to, I know, with all the different ways that you can search and ways to find things, but look into those filters and do pay attention to that work authorization filter. That will give you some information that can be really helpful in this process. Another resource similarly is Going Global, which you have access to through Wellesley, through Career Ed. And there are directories of employers who have sponsored H-1Bs recently. So it's the same thing. It just gives you a sense of what is their culture there? Is this something that they do routinely or not? So that's another great resource to look and start to get some of that information. MyVisaJobs.com is another resource that'll show you which employers have petitioned for H-1Bs in the past. And it also shows employers who have sponsored for permanent residency, okay? Finally, I list the Wellesley Hive on here to look at international alums in a variety of fields. That can be great just to see where did other international students intern, right? If you see that they've got internships, first jobs out of college listed with a particular employer, you can filter alums in the Hive by whether they were an international student at Wellesley or not. And it's just more of that information gathering for you of, you know, find all the alums who are international students in your major. Where did they intern? Where did they work? Again, this doesn't necessarily say it's going to work out exactly the same way for you right now. These regulations do change, but it's all good information gathering to just get a sense of whether this is going to be an employer who's probably familiar with this, they know exactly what they're doing, or not. And maybe they'll need you to do a little bit more explaining and talking through the process.
So all of that was all the research and background that you can do. When you're actually in the interview, you want to know what the employers can and cannot ask. So two of the most common questions that you will encounter are, as Marissa said, are you legally authorized to work in the US? So you need to know the answer to that question. If you are eligible, the answer is yes. Know your requirements and definitely try to apply early. This is where Slater will become your absolute unequivocal best friend. So, and do the process early. The next question is, do you know or now or in the future, do you now or in the future need a visa sponsorship? That will be another question. If at any point you require employer sponsorship, the answer is yes. Answer the question and provide an explanation. Again, all of these should not be yes, no questions, really, particularly if you want to engage in a conversation. And as Marissa pointed out, a lot of times you may have to educate the employer on the whole process. So you want to engage in a conversation so that you can help explain to them, I mean, not in nitty-gritty detail, but sort of generally, sort of what's involved, and hopefully take away any concerns that they may have. You want to remind them that you are worth the investment. Employers cannot ask for your specific immigration status, your citizenship status, your national origin, i.e. your birthplace, the date of birth or age, health or mental health history, race or appearance, no photographs, religion, family status, whether you're married or plan to have kids, or your financial aid status. All of those are tabooed questions. They cannot ask those. Most employers will not. Basic guidelines. You want, again, sort of common sense. You want to be honest and transparent about your work eligibility. So don't be vague or misleading. That's the whole point that we started with this. You want to be concise, you want to understand what it is, and just be authentic and honest about it and engage in a conversation. As Marissa has emphasized many times, do your homework. Understand your authorization and your visa status and start the process early. Have a conversation with them. Avoid short yes or no answers. Take the opportunity to explain your situation. So, as we mentioned before, some employers do not know, and it's a great opportunity to educate them. Again, that goes back to focusing on your value, what you bring. You are worth their time, so help them understand that. And then again, other resources that you can look for on both at Career Essentials for interviewing. We heavily emphasize the Slater employment page, and then just an interviewing checklist, which is also on our resources.